Roundup-resistant genetically modified crops, our government has just approved Monsanto's next generation of herbicide-tolerant GMOs. According to EcoWatch.com, last week, the U.S. Department of Agriculture approved the sale and planting of dicamba-tolerant cotton and soybeans. Cornell University study found that exposure to the herbicide dicamba can cause serious health issues like shortness of breath, muscle weakness, and changes in the human central nervous system. However, thanks to the USDA, we may soon be exposed to 88 times more dicamba on soybeans and 14 times more on cotton. And the latest genetic modification will likely mean a future of dicamba-resistant weeds, just like the weeds that have become resistant to Roundup. Does it really take a rocket scientist to see how this is going to end? If we keep allowing Monsanto to introduce these herbicide-resistant GMOs, weeds will become more resistant, and we will be exposing ourselves to more potent and powerful and prevalent chemicals. We have to stop this dangerous cycle before it's too late. If you find yourself posting lots of selfies on social media, science says you may be a narcissist. A recent study from The Ohio State University examined 800 men between the ages of 18 and 40. After the participants answered questionnaires about their behavior and social media activity, researchers were able to determine the link between posting pictures of yourself and narcissistic behavior. The lead author of the study, Jesse Fox, said, "It's not surprising that men who post a lot of selfies and spend more time editing them are narcissistic, but this is the first time it has actually been confirmed in a study. Posting the occasional self-portrait is normal, but posting a constant stream of selfies might be a sign of mental illness. Or it may just be a sign that some of us are spending way too much time with smartphones and computers." And finally, if you've been priced out of the market for today's electric vehicles, Chevy may have a plan for your next car purchase. General Motors has released their new plan for the Bolt, which is their concept electric car designed for attainability, not exclusivity. In other words, the Bolt may soon be Chevy's electric vehicle for the masses. The new vehicle will also have the ability to self-park once the driver is out of the car and let us use an app to direct the car to return and pick us up at the same location. The Bolt will have a 200-mile extended range that should give buyers comfort about being stranded, and it will compete with Tesla's Model 3, which will have a similar price tag. At $30,000, the Bolt and the Model 3 are still somewhat pricey, but they're thousands cheaper than current electric models, and they will help more Americans make the switch to green vehicles. Mary Barra, the new chief executive of General Motors, said, "Chevrolet believes electrification is a pillar of future transportation and needs to be affordable for a wider segment of customers. Just like Nissan's electric Leaf and Tesla's Model 3, the Bolt will put electric vehicles into the hands of millions more Americans and help our nation take a big step toward a cleaner, greener future." And that's the way it is for the week of January 19th, 2015. I'm Tom Hartman on Science and Green News. Minutes past the hour, before the hour. Welcome back. Tom Hartman here with you, and the place where despair is not an option. Well, this is fascinating. The mayor of Paris intends to sue Fox News. Sean Hannity the other day going, there's no-go zones in Paris where nobody can go in if they're not Muslim, even the police, even the fire department. Fox News later walked this back. Although, in my opinion, not after an enormous amount of damage was done. And probably, they walked it back over the weekend. They hit it really hard during the week. Probably most people don't even know about the apology. And I'm guessing that that's why the mayor of Paris says, we're going to sue. She says the channel insulted her city, Paris Mayor Anne Hidalgo. She said, when we're insulted and when we have an image, then I think we'll have to sue. I think we'll have to go to court in order to have these words removed. The image of Paris has been prejudiced, and even the honor of Paris has been prejudiced. Wow. So, and this also at Democratic Underground. The preview for the State of the Union, Orrin Hatch has already said that Obama's plan to close loopholes for rich people, principally the Romney loophole, that lets rich people who are banksters pay a lower tax rate than rich people who are just like brain surgeons. He says that is class warfare. Right. Anyhow, a lot of calls. A lot of people want to get in this conversation on everything from bubble wrap kids to the State of the Union to John in New Albany, Indiana. Hey, John, thanks for listening to Sirius. What's up?
Excuse me. Yeah, I was talking. I was listening to the radio a while ago, and the guy was talking about some things that might come up on the State of the Union, and I believe he brought up the infrastructure tax.
Yeah.
Proposal. And I was just thinking about the fact that you'll hear the Republicans bemoan the fact that there's, I believe the last time I heard a number, it was like $2 trillion worth of expatriated profits that are parked overseas. Right. And a lot of the people CEOs are trying to get that money back into the country tax-free.
Right.
And I thought that since Obama seems to be in the accommodation mode, maybe what he ought to do would be to allow that money to come back in tax-free, but only under the avenue of getting it into into infrastructure bonds.
Yeah.
So,
here's the thing, John. I mean, we saw this movie before. They did this during the Bush administration, as I recall, and where they had this so-called tax holiday where corporations could repatriate money at, as I recall, it was 5%. And a lot of money came back into this country, and what most of it was used for by these corporations was to buy back their own stock so that their stock value went up and their dividends went up, so that all of their senior officers took huge bonuses as a consequence of that, because they're compensating themselves now with stock options. So it was not a good thing. Anyhow, thanks a lot for the call. Oop, I'm sorry, I hit the button and dumped you faster than I intended to. One thing I did want to share, we were asking when did people start freaking out? This is something I had totally forgotten about. In 1979, a young man in New York City, or in New York, one of the boroughs or burbs or whatever, went missing. He was 6 years old, Etan Patz, P-A-T-Z, and he was the first kid to show up on a milk carton. So maybe we can track this back to 79, the milk carton kids. I don't know, an idea. Mike in Brooklyn, New York, you wanted to talk about the State of the Union?
Yeah, I wanted to talk about this human trafficking that's going on in America, where the private prisons are being funded by the states to house these human beings that the police are directed to arrest. And it took us down all the way through the, to the system.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm absolutely with you. I think that it would be wonderful if the president would come out and say, it is crazy that the United States, which is supposed to be the land of the free and the home of the brave, has more people in prison than any other country in the world, both in terms of absolute numbers and per capita numbers. Even the wild dictatorships, we've got more prisoners than they do. And it is time to take the profit out of the prison industry and out of the arresting industry. And he's already done a little bit of that. Eric Holder dialed back the ability of police departments to basically, if they stop you and they think that you're doing something illegal, steal your car, steal your money, steal whatever is in your car, steal your home. I mean, police departments all over the country do this on a daily basis, and it's almost impossible to get your stuff back. Only about 1 in 10 people who actually make an effort to get their stuff back, get it back, who have never been convicted of anything. And the police departments are using this for everything from parties to MAC 10s. And it's nuts. It's time to change this. You're right. Mike, thanks for the call. Howard in Utica, Michigan. Hey, Howard, you have a story about why kids became bubble wrapped?
Hold on a second. Let me get you off speakerphone here.
Thank you.
Okay, yes. Actually, there was something called the Oakland County Killer in the Detroit area back in 76, 77.
Uh-huh.
That totally changed things for parents. The media played about 4 kids over a 2-year period were abducted and killed. They never did find the killer, and the media played it up like nobody's business.
Yeah.
That totally paralyzed parents in the area. I was a circulation manager. I used to hire the little 12-year-old kids for paper routes. And by 77, we couldn't find carriers to save our souls. And every time we would go out to talk to kids on the streets, the police would stop us.
Oh, that's interesting.
That's how bad it was.
That's interesting.
In fact, as I recall, the media put out that they thought that the suspect had a gremlin, a blue gremlin. And after that, sales of gremlins in the Detroit area dropped like a rock.
Yeah, I can imagine. Huh. Fascinating. So there were apparently, or probably, multiple variables that led into this. The John Walsh, is it Joe Walsh or John Walsh? Joe Walsh, becoming a TV star and developing an industry around missing kids. The milk carton thing, where most of those missing kids on milk cartons were actually the result of bad divorces. The vast majority of kids who are abducted, in quotes, are abducted by a parent. Over 100,000 of them a year in the United States, whereas it's only 100 and some odd kids a year who are abducted by nasty guys like the guy you're describing in Detroit. That's fascinating. So it's been a cumulative process. It's sort of like it's time for us to shake our heads and go, we're going to wake up from this bad dream and give our kids back their freedom. Thank you for that, Howard. Thanks for the story. Mark in Chicago. Hey, Mark, you've got something to add to the conversation here? Thanks for listening to CPT.
Hi, how you doing?
Good.
Yeah, I think 1981 sounds right because that would mean it started with Reagan, and that would mean
everything wrong began in 81.
Well, I think that the Republicans did in fact try to monger and foment that fear because they tried to say that look at the world that the liberals created, that now you can't even send your kids out anymore and that kind of thing. And I think they just benefit from mongering fear. But I think there's already a generation of kids who has grown up with that kind of parenting, and those kids I think tend to be less worldly, lacking in worldliness, lacking in self-reliance, lacking in they tend to be fearful of I think of people, of the world, of people, and I think they tend to be much more selfish. And I think that's also encouraged a lot. And I think you're right for shaking your finger at younger people. Because as the old codger, I think actually really every generation does become a little more sheltered and pampered and more and kind of more self-indulgent as a result of technology gaining increasing dominance of our lives, and then because of the consumeristic context in which the technological advances are brought to us, and so I think that the kind of parenting that kind of parenting is actually very self-indulgent and is kind of selfish. I think it's kind of like parents thinking only about their own anxiety, and it's almost like they would be willing to cut their arms and legs off their kids so they wouldn't have to worry about where they are.
Yeah. Well, I think it's fear driven, but you're making a good point, and it's interesting. And now that you're saying this, I'm thinking, over at the TV studio where I worked, we don't have any millennials who are working here in the radio studio, but there are a bunch of young kids who are working in the television business. It's entry into show business kind of thing, and kids in their early 20s, just fresh out of college. And some of them are quite mature and quite adult, but it constantly surprises me how, when I was 22, 23 years old, we had one child. We were starting on our second. We had already started two businesses. Louise and I were out in the world. We were growing up. We were adults. And a lot of these kids in their 20s, their first half of their 20s, seem to me occasionally, and again, this is the old codger thing, but on the other hand, wisdom is experience tempered by, or is knowledge tempered by experience. It comes about as a result of time. I wonder if what I'm seeing are the bubble wrap kids, the immature ones. It's interesting. Mark, thanks for the provocative comment and observation. We'll be right back. It's 15 minutes before the end.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
And it is John Walsh. It wasn't Joe Walsh. But that's what does it matter? When did this start? How is this going on? What do we do to reverse it?